Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are picking back up with the conclusion of the Avengers Enter the Phoenix storyline, right? Like this great big huge tournament that's going on Earth with regards to answering the question of who gets to wield the Phoenix Force. In the last video, we basically ended with Namor the Submariner empowered by the Phoenix facing off against Echo, who was empowered by the Phoenix. And again, Echo is basically just the girl version of Taskmaster, right? She has the ability to duplicate the fighting style of anybody she sees, and all she has to do is just see them fight in order to be able to duplicate it. But the whole idea behind this is we get this interesting little bit of a discussion with Namor the Submariner, where he kind of talks about when he was a little kid and a bull shark that was a lot bigger than him had basically gone to bite him. And he drug it to the surface, and then he threw it on the surface, and then his mom chastised him, right? She yelled at him at the idea that he was acting very much like a surface dweller, right? That just, that we on the surface just more or less kill indiscriminately, and there's no real reason why. I mean, we do it to like, to feed ourselves, but we also do it for, petty vendettas and things like that. And so the idea was that she kind of posed a question to him, like, are you going to be the kind of person who kills indiscriminately like people on the surface, or are you going to be like a king down in Atlantis? And the response of Namor was pretty interesting there, where he basically said that the philosophy he held is that he would kill anything that tried to attack him so that everything in the ocean would learn not to attack him. And his mother found happiness in that, right? She was satisfied with that answer. And he basically carries this over, right? In the sense that with Namor the Submariner, it's not enough to be a king of Atlantis, right? That's one of the things to understand. It's not enough that he's a king of Atlantis. He wants the surface world to know not to mess with him either. But Namor is one of these guys where he always kind of has a chip on his shoulder, if I'm being honest, right? Like the world's got it out for him. He's always got to prove to the world that he's the top dog, right? Just kind of walk around with a chip, that kind of a thing. Like he's always got something to prove. But the important thing here is even with the abilities that Echo has, the reality is her weakness comes in the fact that she's never faced someone like Namor the Submariner underwater, right? It's just a situation she's never been exposed to before. Now, having said that, following this fight, she would become capable in doing it. The problem is that Namor sends a bunch of sharks on her and then attacks her, sends her down below into the Mariana Trench, and then more or less leaves her for dead, right? And that's just kind of it. So he ultimately ends up becoming, quote unquote, the winner of this fight. And so from there, you switch over to what's probably one of the more interesting fights here, which is Shang-Chi and Captain America. Now, here's the thing to understand about this, right? When it comes to Shang-Chi, he's a master of Kung Fu, right? He's a master of really Kung Fu and Wushu, if we're being honest with ourselves. But the thing about Captain America is he is versatile in a multitude of different fighting styles and is a master in some of them, right? So it's one of these things, right? Who wins this fight? A jack of all trades or a master of one thing? And so it's kind of cool there, because one of the things that's kind of hit at here by Jason Aaron is that Shang-Chi is in some ways not as prodigious of a fighter as Captain America is. And I would kind of argue that point, right? I would argue that Shang-Chi is a much better fighter than Captain America, but Captain America also knows multiple fighting styles. And that's one of the interesting things there, because when you look at Shang-Chi and the idea that he taught Peter Parker the way of the spider and taught him his own fighting style, that it wasn't rooted in like Taekwondo or Judo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right, or Kenpo or anything like that. It was just rooted in what is effectively Kung Fu and Wushu. And so it's interesting to see this, because ultimately you have this kind of a little smidge of a discussion here where Captain America kind of talks about the idea that all of them have spent so long fighting over who it is that should not be the host of the Phoenix Force, that none of them have asked the question, who should it be? And in Captain America's eyes, it should be Shang-Chi. And the reason for this is because Shang-Chi is probably one of the most gifted fighters on the face of the planet, but what makes him so capable and what makes Shang-Chi such a great person to have on your team, despite the fact that all he can really do is hand-to-hand fighting, is he's so good at centering himself. He's so good at putting emotion at bay and fighting like just cleanly and logically, right? Just focusing on the situation at hand and moving forward in that capacity. And that's why Captain America says, like, I want to train you, right? I want to help you hone your fighting style and your skills. I want you to become the best host for the Phoenix. Now, it's not as though Captain America is like, come hang out with me and I'll teach you like the Wakandan fighting style and all that kind of stuff. It's more or less kind of helping Shang-Chi. But again, I would argue that like there really isn't much for Captain America to offer here when it comes to Shang-Chi, right? He's not like he's this brash and reckless kid who's just fighting more with heart than mind. He's clear-headed, right? He's probably the best fighter on the face of the planet. I would say he is. I think he really is the best fighter on the face of the earth, maybe outside of Taskmaster, right? Taskmaster could probably get the upper hand on Shang-Chi. Outside of Taskmaster, I think that like he's the best fighter on earth. But again, it's one of these interesting things where ultimately Shang-Chi's just like, and really even Captain America kind of agrees, one of us has to win. And so ultimately Shang-Chi has like this amazing moment, right, where he breaks out his weapon, and then you get just this thing where he comes lunging at Captain America, and it's like this typhoon of fire just following behind him, and then Captain America's whisked away, right? And that's basically it. And the whole reason behind that is because Captain America's stance was to kind of position Shang-Chi to make him the best host for the Phoenix, but that's not the way it's supposed to be, right? It's just supposed to be a knockdown, drag-out fight between these various heroes to determine which one of them should be the next host, right? So you can't have people working together. You can't have them like conspiring and looking to essentially cook the books and stack the deck in favor of one particular person. Like, you can't do that, right? Instead, it's just got to be them just knock down, drag out, bare knuckle fighting, and whoever wins, wins. And that's why I say, like, Captain America's a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like knocking Captain America. He's a great fighter. The guy overpowered Spider-Man, even though Spider-Man really didn't have an actual fighting style. But at the end of the day, like, I would give it to Shang-Chi, man. Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious. Who do you guys think is a better fighter in Marvel Comics? Do you think it's Captain America, or do you think it's Shang-Chi? Because I really feel like it's Shang-Chi here. But at the end of the day, the Avengers are kind of forming their own plan, their own sort of backup plan, in the sense that as far as they're concerned, the Phoenix Force can't really be trusted. And this is one of the things that I'm not a big fan of in terms of how Marvel's handled the Phoenix Force recently, right? The Phoenix Force, when it was introduced by Chris Claremont in Marvel Comics, was more of a philosophical concept than it was just like a thing that existed out there and did some stuff, right? That the Phoenix Force was designed to kind of represent like this primordial life-giving force, but sort of represent this idea that even the most pure of people can become twisted and evil and become bad guys, right? Jean Grey was, by all standards of measurement, pure of heart, and the Phoenix Force was this concept that didn't really understand or want to know good and evil, right? It was just this primordial force. But when you look at Chris Claremont's X-Men run, it's kind of this idea that like the human race is an infection, right? It's almost kind of like a disease or an illness, and everything we touch, we screw up. And so when you look at the Phoenix, for example, when it took control of Jean Grey, that all the emotions that Jean, more or less experienced, at least at the time the story was written, corrupted the Phoenix Force. Now, later on, Marvel changed it and basically had it revealed the fact that the Phoenix just impersonated Jean Grey and was not actually Jean Grey. But the way that Chris Claremont originally wrote the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix stories, it was Jean Grey, right? It was literally Jean Grey herself. So again, it's one of those interesting things that in a lot of ways, if you look at the Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix saga, it's a cynical critique on humanity, right? That we are really just more of a problem than anything else. And so one of the things that you get here, this is kind of an interesting situation, is you have a couple of fights that take place, and none of them are of any major significance. You do get to see She-Hulk as the Phoenix, which is okay. I mean, it's interesting. It's cool. It's whatever. But then you end up transitioning to the Ukraine, right? And you've got Chernobyl, the exclusion zone, right? Which most of you guys know from the Chernobyl meltdown that the radiation there is insane, and unless you have some kind of a protective suit, you cannot go there, right? Or you'll grow like 2 extra eyes and like 15 legs, right? It's just it'll kill you, right? The radiation will kill you. But that's where the vampires largely dwell in the Marvel mythos. And so when you have Black Panther who's teleported there, Black Panther basically comes into contact with Wolverine, right? Wolverine, who's imbued with the power of the Phoenix. Now, the other cool thing that happens here is that Thor begins to kind of launch this assault that's really designed to distract the Phoenix alongside Carol Danvers and Iron Man and Ghost Rider. But the funny thing here is that the Phoenix persona basically manifests itself to Thor and says, no, like, stop, right? Like I need to talk to you, Thor, because there is a secret that your father never revealed to you. And so from there, what you get, kind of focusing on this Wolverine versus Black Panther fight, this is an amazing fight here. And the reason why is because it's kind of this answer to the question, like, which one's better, vibranium or adamantium? Now, in reality, those of us who read comics know adamantium's better. The only thing that can really take out adamantium is anti-metal from the Arctic, right? There's a few different forms of vibranium that exist in the Marvel Universe, and depending on where they landed, it changed the principles of that metal. So Wakandan vibranium is the vibranium you most commonly think of, right? The Great Mound in Wakanda by which the nation was built. And that's the metal that like absorbs sound and all that kind of good stuff. But Arctic vibranium basically cuts through metal, like it's anti-metal. And so effectively, it doesn't really cut through it so much as break it down on the molecular level as it comes into contact with it. Now, as far as I'm aware, we've never really seen an instance where you had somebody possessing like an Arctic vibranium sword fighting Wolverine and basically like cutting his claws off. I'm not aware that's ever actually happened in Marvel Comics. So I'd be curious to see if it did, right? To see if that's actually the case. By all standards of measurement, given the principles of Arctic vibranium, it should, right? It should, as an anti-metal, it should be able to cut through Wolverine's adamantium. But it's one of these weird things where Marvel's kind of like, nothing can destroy adamantium, nothing can harm adamantium, so Marvel kind of goes back and forth, right? But the long and short here is that Wolverine effectively starts to get the upper hand on Black Panther. Now, one of the things to get here, and this is what makes this fight so cool, kind of like, Wolverine versus Black Panther, what makes this so so cool is not just the fighting styles. That Black Panther is trained in a litany of fighting styles, and even really his core main style of fighting is rooted in kind of a combination of a bunch of different styles that he's all kind of merged together into an amalgamation, which can kind of be considered like a Wakandan martial art, even though that is its own style of martial art. It's what the Dora Milaje use, but like Black Panther has his own unique style. But Wolverine has been around for a few hundred years, and he's trained in pretty much every martial art that exists, right? So Wolverine is a prodigious fighter. He is a highly capable fighter. He's not a master of all of them, but he's certainly more skilled than Captain America is. You combine that with his brute force, his tactics, and the fact that his body's laced with adamantium, Wolverine is a ridiculously hard enemy to kill. And that's why things are so nuts, is because between the intelligence, right, the mental capacity of T'Challa combined with his fighting style and his ability to think in the heat of battle, along with Wolverine and his experiences in combat, the fight is wild and it's amazing, right? It's one of these super cool things. Now, ultimately, Wolverine gets the upper hand on T'Challa, right? Just by ferocity alone. He gets the upper hand on T'Challa, pops two of his claws, and then goes to pop the third. And the funny thing about that is he asks T'Challa, like, so how's it, so what's it gonna be, right? Are you going to like take the L? Are you gonna submit? Are you going to be willing to lose? Or am I going to like pop this third claw and am I gonna kill you, right? And that's what T'Challa's like, I would actually block it. It's like, how in the world would you do that? Only for us to find out T'Challa has adamantium teeth. All right, for those of you guys who are not new to comics, this is what we call a plot device, right? It's called doing it just for the sake of the story. This oftentimes pisses off comic book fans. It pisses comic book fans off in the extreme. Other times, we don't really care. I don't care. I don't get mad about that kind of stuff anymore, right? I've been reading long enough. I've seen that a million times. I've seen comic book stories that happen just for the sake of happening. I think it's super cool that like T'Challa's grills are just like adamantium. That's lit. Like, I mean, I don't advise doing it, right? Like, don't cover your teeth in metal. But the whole thing about this is ultimately like this allows Black Panther to get this momentary upper hand where he literally kicks Wolverine in the balls and then basically gets the upper hand on him, right? And like the fight like literally pummels him to death, like uses his claws and just tears right through Wolverine, right? And that's the end of that. Now, ultimately, Wolverine's healing factor would allow him to live. And the way this kind of seems to go as far as the Phoenix is concerned is like, if under any other circumstance it'd be considered a legitimate death, then like they become the winner. And that's basically it, right? So again, the fights kind of continue on and various people, various foes facing off against each other. But jumping back to Thor, Jason Aaron makes an odd choice here. And the reality is that anybody who's been reading his Avengers run kind of knew it was coming up to this point. And honestly, I'm not necessarily against it. Essentially, the Phoenix reveals that it's Thor's actual biological mom. Odin and the Phoenix essentially touch naughty bits, and that it led to the birth of Thor. Now, this is kind of intriguing because for a long time, Thor's mom was Gaia, right? The sentience of Mother Earth. But the truth about this is it never mattered because Marvel never did anything with it, right? It was just like, it was a thing that was there, right? And like, that was it, right? It was just a thing you knew. And so you just kind of knew about Thor's mom. So the reality of this is, anybody who kind of gets pissed off about this, I think is only really coming from one of two directions. One is because of how it was done by Jason Aaron, how it was revealed, or two, because they just don't want things to change. Because no one out there, right? No one out there reading comics, like those of you guys who are new to comics understand this. There's no one sitting in a comic book store right now who's just celebrating the fact and has like all kinds of memorabilia that represents the fact that Gaia is the mother of Thor, right? Like no one's out there like that's one of the greatest moments in comics, right? When we learned Gaia was the mother of Thor. And it's a hallmark of comic book mythos, right? Like nobody out there is saying that. So in reality, I think it's kind of cool that like Thor's mom is the Phoenix. Now the question to ask here is, what's Marvel gonna do with it? That's the real question to ask. But it does in a lot of ways kind of answer the question why it is that Thor is so, literally far more capable than any of the other Asgardians. You could kind of chalk it up to the fact that he's the son of Odin and just sort of leave it at that, and it would make sense. But the idea of him being the son of the Phoenix really kind of adds a lot of explanation to why it is that he's so powerful. It certainly does a better job of explaining why he's more powerful than being the son of like Whoopi Goldberg from Captain Planet, right? I mean, that certainly makes a lot more sense, right? So again, it's a cool concept here. I like it, and I'm kind of digging it. Now, of course, this sends Thor on a warpath who just kind of refuses to believe any of what he's hearing. And even Jason Aaron kind of plays a little fast and loose and says like, is the Phoenix really telling the truth here? I mean, Thor kind of accuses it and says like, I refuse to believe this. And the response of the Phoenix is, well, whether or not you refuse to believe it doesn't matter, right? Like it's still true. So a lot of it seems to be accurate. This is one of those moments in comics where we're not actually going to know it's true until Jason Aaron follows up and confirms that it's true, right? Like Thor goes to Odin and Odin's like, yeah, I basically banged the Phoenix. At which point if I was Thor, I'd be like, damn, all right, cool, man, good on you, right? Like the Phoenix is hot. Like, I didn't even mean to make that pun. I didn't even mean to make that joke, but like it's a cool thing, right? It's kind of an interesting thing. And so ultimately, the real meat and potatoes of the various battles that go on here all ultimately boil down to really one of the final fights, which is between Black Panther and Captain America. And this is an awesome battle that takes place here. Now, so one of the reasons why this is so cool is because of the fact that when you look at the comic book history of these two characters, there's a lot of respect that Black Panther has for Captain America and a lot of respect that Captain America has for Black Panther. Black Panther's respect for Captain America is not just because of his time on the Avengers and Captain America's role as a superhero and how he operates in the community. It goes all the way back to the fact that Captain America helped fight alongside the Wakandans against the German invasion during World War II. Like literally against the Germans. That's where Captain America got the idea of a circular shield and where he got his piece of vibranium that led to his shield becoming, being turned into its current form. Captain America has a pretty lengthy history in terms of his involvement in Wakanda and fighting on behalf of those individuals who simply can't stand up for themselves or who just need help. That combined with his role as a superhero in the larger superhero community leaves a lot of respect there. For Black Panther, while Captain America doesn't always agree with his motivations and doesn't always agree with the things that he does, he understands why he does what he does, right? It's one of the things we've talked about. Black Panther would let the world burn if it meant saving Wakanda. Like he would literally do that. He would sacrifice the world if it meant saving Wakanda. The fight between the two is really more of a fight of necessity because they're kind of being forced to, not necessarily because they want to, but they both have their own individual goals here, right? T'Challa, in possession of the Phoenix Force, would be able to protect Wakanda from any and all threats that exist out there. Captain America, in possession of the Phoenix Force, while it's not his first choice, and he wouldn't really want to be in possession of the Phoenix because of all the power that it represents, it could certainly allow him to like protect the world from seemingly any threat that was out there. Again, he wouldn't really use it for nefarious purposes. He wouldn't be a dick about it. But while all these different fights are going on and the fight between Captain America and Black Panther is seemingly dead even, you do get this amazing battle between Namor the Submariner and She-Hulk. Now, one of the things about She-Hulk is it's not as though she's lost control. That's one of the things that she clarifies. She hasn't lost control. She knows exactly what she's doing. If I'm going to be honest, that's the one thing that really differentiates She-Hulk from like the Incredible Hulk is the fact that like she doesn't lose her mind. She doesn't become like savage. She has before, but it takes a special circumstance. It's not her default stage, right? The default stage, at least it used to be until Immortal Hulk, the default stage of the Incredible Hulk was like Bruce Banner turns to the Hulk and the Hulk just rampages, right? And that's it, right? It just tears things up. And that's all there is to it. With She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters could actually turn into She-Hulk at will. She could maintain her own mind, right? So it was basically, a good portion of the Incredible Hulk strength, not limitless like the Hulk, but a good portion of the Hulk strength, and then being able to change back and forth at will, right? And so the fight between her and Namor, it's pretty intense. And She-Hulk really starts to get the upper hand. And then, of course, it gets kind of nuts because she literally rips the arms off of Namor the Submariner, which is kind of nuts. Like, she literally pins him to the ground and then rips his arms off. And then he's like, I'm possessed by the Phoenix Force, and then just like pops his arms back, right? Like regrows his arms, which is kind of nuts. Well, it doesn't really regrow him. He just summons them back and then like reattaches them to his body. But in the midst of all that, you have Iron Man, you've got Carol Danvers, you've got the rest of the Avengers who really haven't been selected for this battle. Basically the ones who were left out, so I guess they weren't cool enough to be on the kickball team. But these guys end up having their own plan where they're effectively going to charge up the Avengers Mountain, right? Like the Celestial, this Prime Celestial. They're charging this guy's power up for the intention of firing it off at the Phoenix and essentially destroying the Phoenix, or at the very least, getting it to leave the Earth. Now the reality, and this is an important thing to understand here, the power of a Celestial is dwarfed by the power of the Phoenix, right? The Phoenix Force's power is way beyond anything that any Celestial would have, right? So it's really more of just like a last-ditch effort, and Iron Man even goes as far as to say, this is not a fight that we can win, right? But like, at the very least, we can just do something, right? We can try a thing, right? And just hope the thing works, that like the Phoenix is like, okay, you know what, screw this, and then leaves. But like, if the Phoenix decides to destroy this Celestial and then destroy us and the world, there's nothing we can do to stop it. And so in the middle of one of these great big huge fights, suddenly a hand emerges from the ocean and then just absorbs the entirety of the Phoenix Force from like both combatants involved, right? And then from there, just starts traveling around. It takes the Phoenix Force off of Jennifer Walters. It takes the Phoenix Force off of Namor the Submariner. It snatches it away from like Captain America and Black Panther. It literally just yanks it away from every single person. And the Phoenix Force finally realizes it's chosen its host, right? That now that it has its host, the the kind of emissary or the manifestation of it as it was talking to Thor leaves, right? And it kind of leaves him with a lot of unanswered questions, right? Which is how we know that Thor's going to follow up with a lot of this stuff by going and talking to Odin, right? And so following that, the Phoenix essentially coalesces into its proper host. Everything more or less stops. They're like, okay, like everybody stops, right? And like they're just watching this whole thing go down, only for us to find out the Phoenix has effectively bonded itself to Echo, right? Bonded itself to Maya Lopez. Why it is that Jason Aaron has done this, I have no idea. Presumably because of the fact that Maya is going to appear in the MCU. And the desire here is to raise the profile of Maya Lopez and to get people to notice her, right? And then get people to be curious about her and in turn, like, want to know more about her character, right? So maybe it's worth us doing a video on Maya Lopez Explained. Honestly, we'll probably wait until like the official launch of her character in the MCU. I might just make the video ahead of time and just let it sit until then. I don't really know. But regardless of the situation, Maya Lopez is now the new host of the Phoenix. What that means, I have no earthly clue, right? The Phoenix usually bolsters the powers of the people that it possesses, but Maya Lopez's power is to duplicate the abilities and really just the fighting style of anybody she sees. You know, when you're in possession of the Phoenix Force, you're not really an earthbound character anymore. You're not really going to see somebody who's a host of the Phoenix fighting Taskmaster. That's not really going to happen, right? You know, oh man, yeah, I'm the Phoenix Force. Here comes Hydra. Well, time to fight the Red Skull. You're never going to see that, right? Like that's not going to happen. Like Maya Lopez is effectively a multiversal force of power now. She has the full totality of the Phoenix's power. So, well, at least assuming she can access the White Hot Room, she does. But like she's a host of the Phoenix. She's a universal and multiversal power force. Galactus does not use Kung Fu. As awesome as it would be to see, right? It would be amazing to see Galactus just roundhouse kick somebody, right? Like roundhouse kick a Celestial. That'd be hilarious. But like, you know, they don't do that, right? It's just energy, manipulation, that kind of a thing. So it may be one of these things where she becomes something akin to Protege, where she can essentially duplicate the powers of other people whenever she sees them use them, right? There's no real definitive answers here. Instead, it's just kind of like, we don't really know like exactly how this is going to unfold. But the important thing is everything just kind of goes back to rights and it all just kind of settles back down. And that's it, right? Like the victor has been determined and that victor is Echo. So with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and I will catch you all later. Peace.